Hello everyone, welcome to Eternal Brews. My name is Pojo, and today we're going to be talking about Funstable Sindok, which has been one of my favorite brews coming into Omens, and having a lot of fun with it overall. This was something that we always knew was going to be pretty good. This is a variation on the Funstable Wasteland deck that I was running previously, but we found a few new cards for it, and we're having a really good time. So let's talk a little bit about what the deck is and what kind of things we want to do with it. Basically, the idea behind this deck is that we are using unstable form to set up extremely big units and do like some really crazy things with it. So the initial combo, the one that tends to drive a lot of fun stable form decks, is you get out a card like Northwind Herald, which is a 3/2 flying that's free if you have played 2 spells this turn. At the end of a turn, it becomes a 6-drop again, which means that you can then unstable form it to transform it into a 7-drop. Now, 7-drop has a lot of reliable units that you can play. You can get things like Ikaria, Grinva, all of the big hybrid color legendaries like Vodakhan and other cards like Venom Spine Hydra and Stonescar Leviathan. There's a lot of really good hits at 7. It's one of the best things to upgrade to, and since otherwise the card is a very underwhelming 6-drop, you can actually get this card out very early and do a lot of crazy things with it. Now, this is a pretty well-known combo, so people tend to remove Northwind Herald on site, but we have some pretty special things going on with this. First thing, which I'll credit to a person named CD who submitted a version of this list to me, is the addition of Twinning Rituals, which create and draw a copy of a unit in your hand. Now, when you Twinning Ritual a Northwind Herald, it creates a copy of that Northwind Herald, which means that you can play multiple Northwind Heralds all at once, since all you actually have to do is just Twinning Ritual, and suddenly you have 3 Northwind Heralds. You can play them all for free, and you can just get a ton of stuff out of your hand really quickly. So getting more copies of Northwind Herald makes it a little bit easier to keep that unit alive to get the awesome 7-drop. And so Northwind Herald can play on turn 2, it can play on turn 3 or 4, and then you can turn it into a 7-drop on the turn after that, and it can be really ridiculous and insane. And it's also just a good damage dealer, it's a good pressure unit in the air, it's a good like sort of aggressive thing that's going on. So the other thing that we're doing with this deck is Sindok Rage Incarnate, which has a very similar sort of function to Northwind Herald. This card costs 1 less for each damage the enemy player has taken this turn, and we have a lot of units and weapons in here that are really good at dealing damage. We have a lot of big flyers, we have a lot of sort of aggressive stuff going on. So Sindok can play down pretty cheaply around like turn 5 or 6, and then you can unstable form him to turn him into a 10-drop, which is to say there's only one 10-drop, that is Scourge of Frostome, the 8/8 dinosaur that prevents enemies from casting spells. And that's a pretty good thing to morph Sindok into. Sometimes you're quite happy to have a 7/4 flyer, but most of the time getting a giant 8/8 dinosaur is really special and can really just completely wreck some players' game plans. It denies them of a lot of advantage. If you just hold on to that unit, you can typically just completely outscale them because you're going to draw so many cards that are just better than theirs. So you don't even need to attack with it or like risk things like Scorpion Wasp and Desert Marshal. If there is a Desert Marshal, they can just silence it, of course. Or you can like be aggressive with it because it is, of course, a big 8/8 unit. It's very nasty and you can do a lot of fun things with it. But Sindok himself also is just like a really fun, cheap play card, and if you're getting a bunch of Northwind Heralds out early, then you can typically get Sindok out very early, which we are trying to do in a bunch of different ways. Okay, so that's one half of the combo setup. The other thing that becomes a very important combo card here is Ageless Mentor, which is summon each unit in your hand with cost 4 or more, gets +2/+2. Now, Ageless Mentor is the setup card for pretty much all of our units. We have a lot of units that cost 4 or more but can be reduced in cost, which makes them a little bit cheaper and easier to play. But in addition, this card also works very well with a bunch of units that we have that are just basically standard charge units at 4 or more. So Alpine Tracker, a 3/3 that has a board sweep for tokens, very reliable unit, fairly solid, always just a little bit understated. As a 5/5 charge, this card becomes a minion furnace and also happens to just burn out your opponent for a bunch. It pops all of the Aegises on the board, it pops the self Aegis on your opponent, which is really nice, and then it charges in for a bunch of damage, and that's always really solid. The big winner here is Soulfire Drake, I love Soulfire Drake, Ageless Mentor. A 7/4 Soulfire Drake is just an absolute force to be reckoned with. Big flying charge units are really scary, so it's crazy fun times if you can get the Soulfire Drake up above 7. And then, of course, you can do things like Twinning Ritual with this card as well. And giving everything else in your deck flying or charge is really useful, especially since even one proc of Soulfire Drake, most of the units in your deck already have either flying or charge, so they get both and they become a lot more terrifying. Archive Curator is a 1-of in this deck, which says summon you may silence another unit, and we sometimes take this up to a 2 or 3 of, depending on how the meta feels. Like if we want to have a lot of silences, then Archive Curator is certainly something worth considering. This card is very good at being defensive, which is not something we're really focused on here. This is a very aggro combo deck, but if you want to be more defensive with the deck, cards like Archive Curator, Magus of the Mists, and a lot of the like slower stuff that does not have charge is really good in these situations. So cards to consider. Finally, one of my favorites, Skyward Seer. So this is Spark, draw a flying unit of your choice from your deck. This is one of the more powerful cards, I think, in Omens of the Past. It's got like a lot of really interesting things going on with it. And you can do things like pick out Rhymescale Draconis or Eileen or a lot of things that you really need to do. But in addition, just because you are, of course, getting a Spark, Skyward Seer can be sparked to draw Sindok from your deck. And that is extremely useful for you. You can also use it to pick up the Northwind Herald for the Northwind Herald combo. You can use it to pick up Soulfire Drakes for just raw damage. There's a lot of ways that Skyward Seer can really sort of help you out. So we run 3 of this card, and sometimes we run 2. I like this card quite a bit for just picking up the Sindok and playing out the Sindok on that same turn. You just swing in with a bunch of guys in the air, you get like 9 damage, you play a Skyward Seer for 4, and then you grab Sindok and play him for 0. It's really fun. Other times you can just use her to pick up an Archive Curator or a Soulfire Drake or anything else that you really feel you want to slot into the deck. I wouldn't go overboard on the large units, but cards like Mistveiled Drake to get an Aegis are really solid here, and there are a lot of other things that you can do with Skyward Seer that's pretty fun. In addition, she's a 4-drop, she's not very well statted, and she benefits pretty well from Ageless Mentor. It becomes a 3/5, which is a lot more on curve for a 4-drop, so something worth considering. Final card that's a 1-of is Jotun Hurler. Fate, create, and draw a snowball. This card interacts well with Second Sight, which we're already using to duplicate our unstable forms, because we have a lot of different targets that are really good for unstable forms. Jotun Hurler is a great unstable form target. He's also a good spark triggerer, because he can throw snowballs and then you can just get your spark. And that's always a nice thing to do if you really need that spark. In addition, the snowball can be very useful for clearing out early units. It helps out in the same way that Alpine Tracker does against some of the early stuff. And since we're not running Lightning Storm in the deck, it's a really solid choice for that particular reason. The rest of the deck is pretty straightforward. We have 2 Wisdom of the Elders to make sure that we don't run out of cards, so we can fill our hand for Ageless Mentor. Second Sight and Twinning Ritual are the big Northwind Herald activators, and they also increase the number of unstable forms that we have, which is a really important card because unstable form works well on Ageless Mentor, on Sindok, on Northwind Herald, on Jotun Hurler, on Skyward Seer, and on Archive Curator. It's also pretty good on Alpine Tracker. A 4-cost charge unit does actually get to turn into a 5-cost unit that is still ready to attack, even if it doesn't have charge. Any charge unit that you unstable form is going to turn into something that is still available and ready. So you should keep that in mind when you're using unstable form. Card is really strong in that particular respect. I run 4 Seek Power and 1 Find the Way. Find the Way is more of a Northwind Herald activator than anything, but it also helps fix for that triple fire that's really necessary for Soulfire Drake. So can be very helpful in that respect. Seek Power and Levitate both allow us to get to the Northwind Herald activations earlier. Levitate is also a very good burn spell in many senses. You can just use it to pop up a unit and get it over and deal like 5 or 6 damage to the face. And this is a very big face deck. Soulfire Drake, anything with flying, Northwind Herald, and Sindok, all of that stuff is very likely to be flying over and trying to push out your opponent on damage as fast as possible. That's about it for the breakdown here, so we're going to go into a game and I'll show you how it looks. Alright, round 1 versus Green Mike 87. What are we looking at here? We've got Seat of Fury, Seat of Wisdom, Skycrag Banner. I typically try to keep hands that have Ageless Mentor in them because she's such a strong card for just the rest of your deck. A lot of times, if you don't get Ageless Mentor, your hand can be a little bit weaker. The other things you really want to look for are the Northwind Herald combo, especially if you can get more than 1 Northwind Herald out at once. If you're just relying on 1 Northwind Herald in an unstable form, it can be a little bit tough to keep that hand. But if you don't get either of those things, look for things with enough power to cast all of your cards. And we have that. We have all of the power we need. We're going to play our banners first, and we're going to hope for undepleted power. It's okay to play a couple turns behind. This deck has a lot of pushback and like really good damage, so it's not awful if we get stuck, but we would prefer to play Ageless Mentor on 3. Still, we are largely sort of biding our time for the first couple of turns. Snowball is a really good activator for Northwind Herald as well. I think I forgot to mention that in the early game, so we can do things like Unstable Form Snowball and then get some pretty decent value out of that. Alright, so looks like I'll be playing Ageless Mentor a little bit late, but I'm not feeling too bad about that. Ion the Abductor is rough here. I would really like a torch for that card because, yeah, I'm not particularly fond of just playing it out here. So we're going to go... Maybe I'll turn that into a 4-drop just so I can play my Northwind Herald. Because at the moment I have way too many cards. Like, way too many cards. I don't like turning Ion into a 4-drop, but Ion is also a lifesteal card that I'm not currently dealing with, so we'd prefer our opponent have something slightly better than something that gains
Wing
life.
and blade.
Alright, Valkyrie Spireguard seems very unlikely to be better than Ion, so I feel pretty good about that. We'll Snowball here. I'll play a Northwind Herald. It will probably die, but if we get lucky, we get the 7-cost just big bonus, so we'll see. Alright, a Death Strike straight onto Northwind Herald. That's actually pretty valuable. I'd say that Northwind Herald soaking a Death Strike is a good setup here. Okay, and this looks pretty good. We can Seek Power, grab a Fire, which means that we'll be able to play Soulfire Drake soon. And then with Ageless Mentor, our Skyward Seers and our Soulfire Drake become very, very powerful. So that looks pretty good. I can Unstable Form to grab some really good bonuses off of that. I might do that seeing as we are now seeing the good old Sandstorm Titan on the board. Other options right now include playing Archive Curator, silencing Sandstorm Titan, and then thus getting better Skyward Seers. But that's a little bit risky too. I'm going to Unstable Form, I think, here. Found a Grenadin Cannoneer, which is pretty decent for damage, but not all that good overall. I don't have a lot that I want to Unstable Form here, so we're gonna go ahead and try again. And yeah, we'll just try again. Get a 6-drop, see what we get. Frontline Cyclops. Warcry and Reckless is not a great combination, but that's some damage, so I can live with that. Okay, so my opponent is definitely going to be trying to push back as much as possible, since I am forced to be Reckless, and thus can't really generate a lot of other stuff. So we attack for 6 here. Response is pretty simple, and we're just gonna play the Jotun Hurler, I believe. Skyward Seer gets me Sindok, which I really like, but I don't think I can play Sindok here, so we're gonna just Jotun. The big risk here, of course, is if there's a Death Strike, that's just lethal, so Ancient Lore is not a Death Strike, so I think we're in pretty good shape now. Okay. My opponent attacking in with just the Sandstorm Titan. That's an interesting call. Probably has a Vara's Favor here. I was very excited about playing it. Alright. Now we're going to use Soulfire Drake here, I believe. So there are some considerations. If I want to play I can't play Sindok this turn if I use Skyward Seer. If I play Soulfire Drake, that's close enough to lethal that he probably is going to block with his 3/3, but I'm a little worried about that getting very big. I haven't seen anything that would indicate to me that he's trying to buff that unit, so I'm just going to play Soulfire Drake here. And that's 7 and 6 charging in. Good aggression. So we're really pretty on top of it. I'd say he'll probably block here. Cool. Now he's going to look for a way to silence or kill Soulfire Drake, which I think will work out pretty well in our favor. If I can draw another undepleted power, I can place Sindok off of Skyward Seer. If not, I can just pick up Skyward Seer and pick up Sindok with Skyward Seer and do some good with that. Archive Curator silences Sandstorm Titan, which helps me get 7 damage over the head. In addition, he's not likely to do a whole heck of a lot here. Okay, Stray into Shadow. use my stuff flying in charge, which is important. I'm going to Levitate here, because I want to see both a flying unit and also the potential to get a lot more damage in. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Ageless Mentor seems like a pretty reasonable play here, so we're going to go ahead and tech in, get our Warcry. I like Skyward Seer for picking up a lot of different flyers, but we've already got Archive Curator. I don't think Sindok's going to be a big formative card in this deck, and Ageless Mentor makes all of my other cards strong right now, so we'll pick that up. Also, it has flying, so that's pretty neat. And yeah, we're over the top. We did pretty well with the Unstable Form chain. Had to gamble a little bit more than I anticipated on this Frontline Cyclops, but it did end up being a good card in the end. Okay, Banish 1 is out, and he's got 4 for a potential Death Strike.
Is what was.
Looks like Steward of the Past instead. So we're going to go Archive Curator to silence that. That actually was strictly unnecessary. I could have just played Skyward Seer here. Yeah, that would have been better. If I played Skyward Seer, then I would have gotten Sindok, and I would have also had a 5/7 to attack with, so that would have been better. And I misclicked. So, you know, some mistakes are being made, but yeah, I meant to attack continue, and anyways, hopefully that won't cost us anything. It looks like we have pretty solid control of the game. My opponent playing Seed of Mystery here. Twinning Ritual's pretty cute. I'm going to attack for 3. Shadowhun's Feaster on the block. Okay, so now things are gonna get really scary. Twinning Ritualing a Skyward Seer doesn't seem like a good idea, so let's just play a Skyward Seer. Oh, I don't have Spark. That's fine. Sometimes I hold on to the Seek Power just to get a little bit more value out of it.
Power flows through.
Okay. The attacks with ooh, Sindok has Charge, which I think is pretty solid here. We now have double attacks, which is not great. I kind of just have to hold the fort here, which I don't love. I could Twinning Ritual a Skyward Seer and give it Charge. There's not a lot going on here that I'm particularly fond of. Attacking for 5 forces a block. We'll play another Skyward Seer.
The spirits gather.
And we're going to hold off on the Twinning Ritual for now, because there are a lot of different targets for it that I would like. So we've artificially extended the length of this game a little bit, but I think we'll probably turn out okay. An 8/8 Mystic Ascendant potentially charging in. I need a Soulfire Drake pretty badly.
It's written right here.
And 2 Temple Scribes to defend. That's pretty worrying. Okay. Now this is a little bit closer to what we're looking for. We Levitate here. That gives us a 5/7 charge. We Levitate again. As I said, Levitate is a burn spell. This is now 8 damage, along with a Skyward Seer, which I really want to play. And unless he has a removal spell, that should be game. Okay. So picked it up. We had the game in the first place, but I messed up pretty hard, and nonetheless, we managed to get it all through. Damage is still available in this deck. It's always good to have. Alright, so next round, we'll see what we get. Alright, so this game's up against Spider Bite, and the opener looks like not terribly strong. Sindok's nice, but I think I want to try and just find some better units. And we found an Ageless Mentor, which is really what we want to do. So Ageless Mentor is just the key card in this deck. Like, I think she really ties the deck together very well. And if you can get her in the opening hand, the rest of the deck should proceed with pretty, like, alarming excellence. So I'd say she really increases the reliability of this deck by quite a lot. It's nice to play other... I would like to find some other cards to sort of replace this card, or at least, like, not replace it, but find a little bit of redundancy there. It's a little bit hard. She doesn't have too many
It's written right
healers. aren't that many good 3-drops. Some good options might include Dawnwalker. That's certainly something I've been considering. We're going to second sight at end of turn here to draw a couple of extra cards and give us more stuff to pack in on Ageless Mentor.
Safe travels, friend.
That's the hope anyways. Alright, no blocks. And then I'm going to second sight. And we found Unstable Form, which is a pretty cool card to have second sighted. Alright, so luck's on our side. We're going to go ahead and play Ageless Mentor here. And then I'll have a really good Alpine tracker next turn, which is something I definitely want. Mess up the token decks. We'll see if it's a Xenon Obelisk. That would be very sad.
Close your
Alright,
eyes.
Combre Healer. That's definitely more up my alley. Okay. So ordinarily this would be quite a blockade, but here it's pretty simple. We just Alpine track, knock all of the guys that are in our way out of the way, and swing in. Now, my opponent's got Combre Healer to worry about. I did make a mistake there. I attacked with the Ageless Mentor even though it was damaged. Yeah, that was an error. Soulfire Drake looks pretty cool at this point. I'm a little bit worried about Desert Marshal. Yeah, Desert Marshal might be a thing. And I played the wrong power. Oh, goodness. Alright, well, recording mistakes have been... I've been making a lot of mistakes tonight. That's okay. I think we're gonna do fine. So we should just play Soulfire Drake this turn, and then, yeah, Lumen Defender. This is the Chalice deck, which is always a little bit scary. The good news here is that you can't play Desert Marshal on my stuff and just knock me out of the air, so that's something that's pretty important at this point. No blocks there. I'm guessing he's considering Desert Marshalling here, which he probably has, but we'll find out. I think for 14. Scorpion Wasp is torchable, I would say. Although perhaps he's going to Harsh Rule me at this point. 3 damage there. Primal Sigil, and a Harsh Rule.
This ends now.
So every unit in my deck now has flying and charge. Skyward Seer seems unlikely to be a good idea at this point. Seat of Order is not a Crystalline Chalice. Hey, and that's a flying charge Skyward Seer. I'll certainly take that. So since this has charge, I can just unstable it. Turn it into something useful, like a Reliquary Raider. Draw me a card. Seems like a pretty good deal to me. Play the Skyward Banner, and I will end my turn. Now, Reliquary Raider is just short of being 10, which I would really like. And we get that extremely nice advantage of being able to just unstable form this out of silence into something better. Mentor Ambassador's not quite there. I'm going to try again. That one looks pretty good. Well, Alpine Tracker. And that's lethal, so let's see what happens. Got it! Alright, so good stuff, good stuff. Alright, here we go. Last game of the night, hopefully. Sigil is our opponent. And it looks like we got Praxis Banner, Primal, Levitate, Seek Power, and Sindok. Again, I really like the Ageless Mentor hands, so we're going to keep it, see what we can do with it. Sindok's not amazing here, but it's possible that we'll find some pretty good stuff to go with it. So we're going to Praxis Banner first, and we'll Seek Power or use double Levitate. I actually kind of like the double Levitate plan a little bit.
Winds protect
just because it fills my hand a little bit better for Ageless Mentor. Alright, looks like we can't do that, so we're going to just Seek Power, grab a red, because we need triple red, and then I would prefer to Levitate as soon as possible.
Tell me, what do you see?
Alright, more Levitates. So we're going to draw our cards here. Just get as much stuff as we can. Didn't find anything of particular value here. I'm just going to Torch Cothan then. And we're just looking for something for Ageless Mentor to buff up, like a Soulfire Drake. Northwind Herald will work too. That's actually a pretty good one.
Time to reflect.
Okay. So next turn I get to Twinning Ritual Northwind Herald and Torch something. And if I do that, I get to play 2 big Northwind Heralds on turn 5, which feels like a pretty good setup. Although, obviously, Harsh Rule is a real deal. Something we're going to have to worry about. Hey, Sindok. Okay. So if I were to attack and Torch, Sindok would be 4 cost. Except that he's got an Aegis up, so... yeah, we'll just swing for 2 here. And I'll end my turn. It was a little bit rough. I would prefer to have something to torch here. I would prefer to have a lot of things going on. I'll swing for 2 again. And I'm going to torch to pop the Aegis. Twinning Ritual, Soulfire Drake. And play Northwind.
Storm is upon you.
Because we want to play around Harsh Rule here. And I guess Bring Down. That's really not a lot of fun either. Okay, so the deck has Bring Downs in it, which means it's probably a lot better at dealing with me than you'd really want it to be. But if I can get my 3rd red, then we can charge in for a lot of damage and hopefully get past Bring Down. Second Sight looks great. And we found Unstable Form, which is even better. Gotta put that Unstable Form on top, get a 4-drop. And it is a Valkyrie Militant, which isn't exactly the greatest, but we'll take it. Alright, very torchable, that's fine. Start my turn. I don't have anything worth playing this turn, so we're just going to kind of sit on our heels. Fortunately, most of my stuff is pretty hard for control decks to deal with. But yeah, we do need to actually find something to play. Seed of Fury. I'm hoping for no more Bring Downs. Let's play a Northwind Herald here.
Is upon you.
He's got a torch, so be it.
Halt!
Valkyrie Enforcer is definitely not an answer. So that's really good for me, because now I get a 7-drop. Unless he also has a torch. That's not a very good 7-drop. That's actually, there are now bad 7-drops. I'd forgotten about Topaz Drake. It is a particularly not good 7-drop. So, let's go ahead and play Seed of Impulse. Actually, let's Unstable Form again. Let's get an 8-drop.
Let us hunt.
That's much better. So, Torch, Valkyrie Enforcer, or just swing for 8 is the question. I think swinging for 8 is fine, seeing as we've got an Aegis 8/8 flyer. And that should draw quite a bit of attention. I want to save the Torch to clear a path for Soulfire Drake. Vanquish. Just fine. And Harsh Rule. That would suggest he's pretty close to being out of cards. Alright, we're gonna bet that his next card is not Harsh Rule. And I'm gonna Soulfire Drake. Swing for 6. I'm gonna Torch. And I'm gonna play 2 Sindoks. And it's Harsh Rule or bust for him now. If he does have Harsh Rule, fine. That means he doesn't have Bring Downs and I can just Soulfire Drake him twice. But if he doesn't have Harsh Rule, that's game for him. So this is a pretty fun commit. Looks like we got him. There you go. Sindok and Soulfire Drake work very well together. Alright, so that's it for today's games. And yeah, we'll talk to you in just a second. So there are a lot of different ways to run this deck. I don't like playing both Soulfire Drake and Magus of the Mist in the same deck, but I wanted to talk about it as a sideboard option. So we probably won't call this like an official list, but Magus of the Mist is another really good card for Unstable Form and Ageless Mentor interactions. Again, being survivable, really important. If you can summon something that can actually withstand a torch and also play a 6/6 Illusionary Dragon with flying at the same time, that's a pretty good deal against a lot of aggro decks. They don't like it very much, so if you want to shift this deck more towards blue, Magus of the Mist is a really powerful card. Another really fun finisher is Shogun of the Wastes, a 3/3 that happens to get good bonuses from Ageless Mentor due to double damage really being influenced by that extra set of buffs, and also happens to give double damage to cards like Soulfire Drake, which are typically your very big finishers in these types of decks. I like a 1-of in these quite often. I think it's pretty cool. For Skyward Seer, if you're going to be playing with Skyward Seer, some other things that I would consider include the Mistveil Drake, which is a really good finisher, or a really good way to sort of defend yourself against a lot of stuff, and also very good against control decks. You saw how good Molet and Nakova can be. They're a very strong spark card, and if you want to pull that off of Skyward Seer early, then you can play it late and get like a significant amount of value out of that. I don't have a Molet, but that's always a really interesting option. In addition, there is, of course, the Frost Drake, which is to say the 7/6, what is that called? Rhymescale Draconis. Rhymescale Draconis plays Permafrost on every exhausted enemy unit. Another really fine sort of interesting tool for Skyward Seer. So if you're playing with the Skyward Seer version of the deck, I recommend like 1-ofs of these if you want to like fiddle around and do some interesting things. There's a lot of other good flyers around there. I encourage you to look at the full list of flyers. Just type flying right in here and look at everything in Skycrag and Praxis and see what you can play with. There's a lot of interesting ideas out there. Curiox, I think, is probably not a great one, but Hunting Teriax can actually be a very solid card in this deck. I often run it in this deck just because it functions essentially as a second Soulfire Drake. You ambush it at end of turn, and then it essentially has charge. But, of course, you do miss a turn of value and a turn of aggression as a result of doing that. Still, you can also pick up some 2-drops that way, so it can be a very solid way to make really aggressive things happen with flyers. And I like that decision quite a lot. Nesting Abyssor can make things cheaper. Champion of Wisdom, if you are really, really deep into Time and Primal, can be very useful. I wouldn't typically do that unless you're playing with Predatory Carnosaurs, and then you have more reason to go for like big stuff. So you could do like the Cerso, Carnosaur, big Ageless Mentor type setup. You're much less likely to be running Soulfire Drake in that case, but you still might be able to run Sindok, because Sindok is just a little bit easier to cast in that type of deck. The one other thing that I think is really interesting with this deck that I haven't had a chance to play with yet, because I just can't afford it, is Flamestoker. This is at the start of your turn, play an Infernus. Now, an Infernus is a 5-cost unit, which means that it morphs very evenly into a 6-cost unit off of Unstable Form, and the Flamestoker does not play a free Infernus, so you get to basically play the 5-cost unit, then zap it, and turn it into a 6-drop. Charging with the 5/5 aggressive unit seems quite good as a start. But if you're playing a solely Unstable Form based deck, I think this might end up being a brew video at some point. But I just sort of wanted to point out that synergy if you wanted to play with Flamestokers, because Unstable Form Infernus is a pretty good way to keep your Infernus and also get a really stupendous amount of value out of that card and Unstable Form. The more Unstable Forms you have, the more continuous value you can get out of Flamestoker. I like that plan a lot, so just wanted to mention it. That's it from me for tonight, folks. We'll have some highlight videos up hopefully over the week, and I will also be doing more brew videos. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time with more Eternal Brews. Have a really good night.